Fuck the slides, want the pie. Why is why till we fry? Watch us all stand in line for a slice of the devil's pie.
I think at the time I heard it, I thought it was more like these are all terrible things. And like I heard the moralizing. Now when I hear it, I sort of hear like, and I hope I'm not putting something on D'Angelo that is not there, but it's almost like he's saying these are the temptations that I personally am being
I hear
faced
that
with.
too. I hear that too.
And I don't want it, but yet we're programmed to want it. But it definitely feels a lot more personal.
It's about
and less
temptation.
judgy.
It's about we can't control these things that are out there and tempting us, and it's life.
All right, Luxury. So today we're honoring an artist who epitomizes Black genius. His music blurred the lines between gospel, funk, hip hop, and jazz, proving that soul music could evolve, challenge expectations, and feel timeless all at once.
That's right, Diallo. And today we're highlighting a song that was arguably a bridge between his debut and sophomore albums, foreshadowing the raw innovation and spiritual vulnerability that was to come.
That's right. Today we're talking one song, and that song is Devil's Pie by D'Angelo.
Fuck the slides, want the pie. Why is why till we fry? Watch us all stand in line for a slice of the devil's pie.
I'm actor, writer, director, and sometimes DJ Diallo Riddle.
And I'm producer, DJ, songwriter, and musicologist Luxury, aka the guy who whispers interpolation.
And this is One Song,
The show where we break down the stems and stories behind iconic songs across genres and tell you why they deserve one more listen.
You will hear these songs like you've never heard them before, and you can even watch One Song on YouTube and Spotify. While you're there, please like and subscribe.
All right, Diallo, today we're going to pay tribute to an absolute legend that we lost this year, D'Angelo. This one hit us all pretty hard.
Yeah, I think we're still dealing with it. You know, ironically, we had just talked about D'Angelo while discussing Neo Soul.
Right.
Just a couple of days before it happened.
Crazy
so
coincidence.
He was very front of mind.
I had just bought the record. It was on my turntable.
Yeah.
I was listening to D'Angelo when I heard the news. It was right there. The cover was staring at me. It's crazy. He was in the air. He has always been in the air, arguably,
Absolutely.
his music. Yeah.
And I know that, you know, anybody who's ever worked with him or was close with him still feeling it. So nerves are a little raw as we try and dive into this song and this legendary singer. And I'll even say, ever since we started this show, D'Angelo was an episode that we wanted to do. You know, it was something that we wanted to do from the very beginning. There are a couple of people, you know, from Bjork to Whitney. There's certain people who just, if you appreciate singers, you know that like, oh, we got to do an episode about them. So we're doing this episode, admittedly, because we're all thinking about him right now. And hopefully everybody will come away feeling like we've only celebrated this once-in-a-lifetime artist.
Diallo Riddle, when was the first time you heard D'Angelo?
So I got Brown Sugar in the mail when I was working at my college radio station. And D'Angelo immediately stuck out to me. First of all, he had cornrows and a leather jacket, which back then was like code for like, you know, probably like I'm a rapper. I'm an East Coast rapper specifically. You know, there was that I'm a thug, you know, that was out there because of a Tupac. But then when I put on the music, he was singing these beautiful soul songs. It was crazy that these two things together. I just remember being impressed by how his visual style and slang were very much rooted in the present of the mid-90s. Meanwhile, his sound was more informed by the past, but in a good way.
That's really well said. And I had the same impression. There was something surprising about when he opened his mouth, whether it was to sing with his incredible vocals, but also just talking. He was obviously such a thoughtful person. Like his creativity, it was all tied together with who he was. Very authentic, very vulnerable. His vocals are so vulnerable. And real. The fact that they were, and we'll be getting into this when we listen to the stems, they were so raw and unprocessed and unperfected.
They were authentic.
Authentic. They don't all line up perfectly. They don't all hit every single note exactly. This is when Pro Tools exists, but that isn't being used for any of this music. And I think it's exactly perfectly who he was as a person.
And I also think it's a little bit about the timing, because if you think about it, like this is a time when like we're still living with, you know, sort of like the polished Keith Sweat, you know, like R&B singers typically still wear suits and look like, you know, very smooth, you know, like it was like that GQ smooth vibe that Eddie Murphy has in Boomerang, you know, but this was decidedly not that.
He's not
this was
doing
a
that.
Totally
He's doing the
different
opposite of that.
guy who's just doing him. And yet he's still able to sing these beautiful ballads. I think it's one of those things that artistically, when everybody else is saying, I'm going to the right, he was like, I'm going to go left. Like, it's just something completely off into a different direction. I thought creatively, that's what kept him so interesting from the start. What about you, Luxury? What was the first time you heard D'Angelo?
It was definitely the iconic video for Untitled. That was the first time I saw and heard, and the entire package was delivered and received. Is a beautiful man with a beautiful voice and a beautiful video. The artistic everything was all encompassing. And of course, I wasn't the only one who felt that way. We're going to get into this a little bit later, but that video made a big impression on a lot of people.
In a time before social media and everything being online, you can almost say it went viral, so to speak. Everybody was talking about it.
And of course, I'm talking about the iconic Untitled video where D'Angelo is shown shirtless, gradual reveal that he's shirtless. It's a single shot, and it rotates around his body while he sings this incredibly beautiful, vulnerable song. And it just gives you the entirety of who he was in one video. But of course, was also controversial. We'll be talking about it a little bit later.
We'll talk about that.
The implications of how this video was for him as an individual and for his career.
Absolutely. Since we're here to pay tribute to D'Angelo, why don't we back up a bit and talk a little bit about how D'Angelo, a.k.a. Michael Eugene Archer, got his start in Richmond, Virginia.
So D'Angelo was the son and the grandson of Pentecostal ministers, and he grew up in the church. There's some incredible early footage of him in the church, like singing and playing piano. He's an incredible keyboard player. He started playing piano when he was 3.
My 3-year-olds have just not been this impressive.
No, they've been underwhelming. I wanted to talk to you about their
just
piano
watching Coco Melon all day.
And in addition to his early piano prodiginess, he also joined the choir at age 5. So music is in his blood at an early age.
Yeah.
Plus, he was just born with something special. So he was taught these things, and he was in the church environment to learn and become and grow at them. But there was also some seed that was just who he was.
That's right. I think there was clearly something going on there. It's also such an analog period in time. I do think that there's so many digital distractions for kids now. Their creativity goes elsewhere.
Right.
But at this time it was just like, I have all these, musical thoughts. I got to join a choir. It's fine. I'm 5, but I got to do something with my life. Not only was D'Angelo growing up with a heavy dose of gospel, he was also soaking up the sounds of legends like Prince and Al Green. There were also newer artists at the time. I'm talking Keith Sweat. I'm talking about the band Guy. He's digesting all of this too. What's interesting is that D'Angelo has said it was actually Teddy Riley's fusion of hip hop and R&B that really pushed him into start making his own music. We've talked on the show about New Jack Swing. Now, Brown Sugar, for those who've heard it, we know that's not anything we would ever qualify as New Jack Swing, but you can clearly hear D'Angelo blending hip hop and R&B in his own way. And that's one of the things that makes him so unique. Let's check out a bit from the title track from Brown Sugar. This is Brown Sugar.
Brown sugar, babe. I guess high up your love, I don't know how to behave.
Wow. I love that song.
That's so good.
And you can hear so much of what's coming in his future in that, because there's that old organ in there.
Yeah.
Sounds like a church organ.
Right.
A Hammond organ.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, he played all the instruments on this.
It's just him and Ali Shaheed Muhammad, right?
Ali Shaheed Muhammad, one of our unsung heroes, because I don't think that I knew at the time that he was a part of this project, and he surely was. Yeah. I'd also be remiss if I didn't play my favorite song off of this album. I love his remake of Cruisin' by Smokey Robinson, but really Lady, which is Raphael Sadiq produced, I believe. This song just sends me. Here's a little bit of the album version of Lady. And here's a gem for fans of D'Angelo. This is a live version of the song on the Chris Rock Show back in 1997, performing with Raphael Sadiq, Ali Shaheed Muhammad, and Questlove. Like I said, on the Chris Rock Show, this is Lady Live.
Wonderful, such a wonderful, such a wonderful, such a wonderful lady, such a wonderful,
so fun to see them all young like that.
Incredible, yeah. What great footage. It's not New Jack Swing, but it's swing. All these songs have swing.
Well, they do have a swing, and I think some of
that
that has to do with Raphael Sadiq. And I just realized while watching that clip, to me, Raphael Sadiq is like Nile Rodgers. He's a little bit like Pharrell. He has his own recording career, but you get the sense he actually enjoys producing for other people too.
I think so. Participating in all of these incredible other careers.
Yeah, seeing him like up on that stage, like sort of like, bouncing around with his guitar, like you get the sense he's very much in his I create music because it makes me happy space.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
that's a good
love
point.
Raphael Sadiq. It's just, he's done so many things, whether with Tony or Lucy Pearl or D'Angelo. Like it just, people slept on his album, Instant Vintage. Great album. And if you ever get a chance, please go back and listen to that.
No, you're right. He's kind of like Mark Ronson's kind of a similar figure where he's a producer, a
Yes.
songwriter. He has his own career, but he's also constantly collaborating. And you see him like playing bass on stage with maybe, Bruno Mars or Lady Gaga, whoever it is. And
Amy Winehouse.
he enjoys that. Yeah.
Yeah.
He enjoys being part of the eclectic mix of music making.
I love this quote from D'Angelo about his approach to combining R&B and hip hop. He said, quote, "To me, it's not melding the two worlds so much as it's exposing where they meet in the middle."
That's great.
And
Yeah.
I cannot agree more. It's not that he was melding. He was literally just saying like, hey, there's so much shared culture
There's a lot
here
of overlap. Yeah.
that we're not exploring, in some of the contemporary R&B of the moment. Let's go a third way. And I'll say, as like a guy who was primarily hip hop at this time, like this was R&B that I could really get into, like in a real way, because there seemed to be so much happening sonically that felt almost more hip hop to me
Yeah.
than even R&B at that time.
I wonder if it's just the organic instruments, because I am trying to find what that middle ground is. It's such a great quote, and I hear it, but I'm trying to tease out what the specifics are.
I think, in some ways, maybe it is that there's an organic drummer.
But it's programming actually, like on Brown Sugar. I looked it up. I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah, yeah.
know.
Oh, I believe
It's
it.
programmed drums.
But I feel
That
like,
sound real.
if I'm just thinking about the R&B at the time.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, it's actually hard to put yourself in a time capsule and go back and be like, oh, there's R&B that sounds like this. Not at that particular moment.
Yeah, it was
At that
mostly
particular
digital.
moment,
It was mostly
very
synthetic
digital.
production.
It was very smooth.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Keith Sweat. He's a great guy, personally and artistically, but everything was very smooth.
It's very clean, very smooth.
But this
Yeah.
felt different. This felt more, for the lack of a better term, like grimy and gritty. And it felt more like East Coast hip hop at the time.
Well, obviously, D'Angelo's Brown Sugar was, as a breakthrough record, something that put his career to the next level. And that's a record that he worked on with Bob Power, it should be said. Go back to our Tribe Called Quest episodes, our two-parter for more about him, an engineer who really brought out a lot of the sonics. But D'Angelo has said, upon reflection, what he was wanting to do for the next record was go a little bit of a different direction and go back to what the demos sounded like before they turned into the final version of Brown Sugar. There was something in those demos that he had done at home with a 4-track just by himself, where once it got produced, it lost something to him. There was something that changed. When it came time to make Voodoo, it was an exploration and a search for something that didn't really have a name. And that was a big part of the process. And we'll be getting into that later.
What's crazy is I feel like I hear exactly what D'Angelo's saying. Like I absolutely hear where there is a smoothness in the Brown Sugar album that's definitely thrown out by the time that we get all the way to Voodoo. But there was a process getting there. And sort of along the lines of talking about that process of getting there, after the huge success of Brown Sugar, D'Angelo started feeling the pressure to follow it up, with something, just as big. And that led to some serious writer's block. He was also getting frustrated with being labeled neo soul, which is funny because I think that we talk about genre on this show all the time. We use these terms like neo soul and new wave so that it's easier to talk about music. But in our heart of hearts, it's not so that we can put the artist that we love into a box.
Yeah.
So I even understand why D'Angelo did not feel totally comfortable with the idea of neo soul. But we've talked about it before, and it's worth saying that even the term neo soul was actually created and marketed by his then manager, Kadar Massenberg. What actually broke him out of this crippling writer's block was the birth of his son. He had a son with Angie Stone, who I'd also love to do an episode about. The birth of Michael Archer Jr., a.k.a. Suevo Twain. In fact, the first song he wrote for Voodoo, Send It On, was something that he and Angie Stone wrote together. Let's hear a little bit of Send It On.
And if it's sitting on back, baby, something to do. No, I got to send it to you.
Love that song.
So good. It's like the tightest, coolest, untight rhythm section of all time. Tight, untight.
What's going on in that rhythm section?
Well, just one thing that happens a lot in both albums, actually, we've been discussing is the side stick on the drum kit. Like this use of the stick to hit the rim.
Yeah.
It's not a rim shot, by the way. Common misconception. A rim shot is very loud. A rim shot is like, you're actually hearing the snare and the rim at the same time, so it's really loud.
Yeah.
But a side stick is that really kind of cool, mellow. It's very jazz. It's softer.
I've
and it's all over both of these records.
I've spent time with Questlove in the studio sometimes, and every now and then he'll just be there and he'll be doing that little side stick right there. I didn't know they had a name. That's pretty cool.
It's Mas Chill, man.
Mas Chill. Let's shout out some of the incredible players on Sitting On. And the rest of Voodoo, we got Questlove on drums, Pino Palladino on bass, Spanky Alford on guitar, and Roy Hargrove on trumpet and flugelhorn. And I also want to mention Russell Elevato as mixer and head engineer, and also Sugar Steve, who is a buddy of mine, and I know that like so many who worked on this album Voodoo, there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of sadness, but we're here, like I said, to celebrate.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't point out the credited, by the way, interpolation on this song. That's right, Kool and the Gang's Sea of Tranquility is interpolated at the very top of the song. So here it is in Send It On, and then I'll play for you the source of what was replayed. Kool and the Gang's Sea of Tranquility from 1969 sounds a little like this. I think it's a fair cop. You use that,
Absolutely.
You pay for it. That's
and
fair.
you know what? It actually tracks with the stories that they've said, which is that they would go into the studio and they would watch all these, VHS tapes and self-burdened DVDs that Questlove had of these performers. They were, digesting all this stuff.
They were absorbing and digesting, and really, like, the word ingestion is a huge this process for a year. From what I've come to hear in all of the interviews, and there's many wonderful interviews with Questlove and D'Angelo and the rest of them, they'd spent almost a year at Electric
actively
Lady
recording. This isn't like one of those things where like, we'll meet back up in a couple months.
They said, quote, the majority of the time we would sit and watch Prince, and that's how the process would start. We would sit in front of the TV from 7 in the evening to 9 o'clock. We would watch performances over and over again. And then they'd go to the studio and just having like absorbed into their bodies the experience of watching and listening to this music and talking about it and playing records. Then they would go to the studio and start playing, and it would gradually morph and evolve naturally into original material. It starts as them maybe covering an idea or taking a little fragment of something they'd heard and expanding on that. And before you know it, it becomes something completely new. And sometimes it doesn't, such as in this case where they're like, you know what, let's just keep that Kool and the Gang thing we liked, which is what they ended up doing on this song.
And I have to say this is all self-archived material. Think about the year, everybody. This is like late 98, 99, like, you don't have YouTube. Nowadays, people are like, oh, have you ever seen Jimi Hendrix perform on that weird late night show with
here it is.
Now you just jump there and you go there. Like, this is all stuff that like almost like in his backpack, Questlove is walking around with like every episode of Soul Train in his pocket. And that's so important to realize that like that's the level of commitment that you had to have back then to be able to produce to somebody and say, hey, by the way, I've got all these performances on tape or on DVD.
Questlove likes to say that at the time before there was YouTube, he was YouTube. He says he was the guy that everyone would send the archival, the like rare footage. He would go from, country to country with touring with the Roots, and people knew that Questlove just was absorbing, he was a collector. So they'd give him not just records and B-sides of like, records, not just musical material, but also VHS tapes of like rare archived, like, live performances that had never been, released publicly of Prince and, Sly and the Family Stone. So he just kept all this stuff. I think he's got lots of warehouses somewhere in Philadelphia. And this was the material that they absorbed, and they were able to sort of swim in their influences in the process of making this record. Questlove, by the way, called these treats, quote unquote, like these, he said, we had all these treats lying around, and they would study these treats. And he said that they had a handful of influences in particular that he referred to as the Yodas. So the Yodas were Jimi Hendrix, George Clinton, Prince, I think Sly Stone, Al Green, Fela Kuti were all in the mix as like, these were the ones that were particularly absorbed into their musical bloodstreams in the process of making this record.
That's so interesting because all those guys like lead bands.
That's a really good point, right? These are all like individual visionaries, musical visionaries who sort of put the pieces together with different musicians from album to album, year to year.
All these guys were band leaders. They were literally like Miles Davis and Duke Ellington in that sense. I mean, one of their influences is clearly Jimi Hendrix. What can you tell us about the relationship of voodoo with Jimi Hendrix?
Jimi Hendrix was at the core of the operation here. Jimi Hendrix, first of all, this is recorded at Electric Lady Studios, which at the time, go back to our Jimi Hendrix, by the way, double episode. We talk about the making of Electric Ladyland, the record at Electric Lady Studios, which was
It seems like it should be the opposite, right?
I always get that.
Electric Lady should be the song. Electric Lady Land should be the place.
I do classic. It is classic me to get those two confused.
Oh, I think we're all confused.
Electric Lady is the studio, and when they came to Electric Lady, it hadn't really been used in a long time. But when they walked in the doors and they saw all the iconic, like literally the Rhodes keyboard that Stevie Wonder had used, and like Jimi Hendrix wall, it's like the 70s music that they had been listening to and absorbing. This was the place, and this was the vibe, and this is where they sat for a year and change, jamming, eventually turning the jams into songs and just living and breathing in the music. And Jimi was sort of the central shrine in all of this, was Jimi Hendrix. Literally images of him throughout the studio. Of course, this being the place where he made that record. And they literally jammed on Jimi Hendrix songs. That was the genesis of the song Root, came out of jamming on a handful of tunes from Electric Ladyland and Axis Bold as Love. So there's a lot of Jimi in the mix in this record.
Said I love my mojo. Mojo, left my mojo in my favorite suit.
Oh, I hear the Jimi. Why is that so good? Why is it so good? Why is music so good? But why is that music so good?
That music's so good because you get the sense that they were in the studio 12 hours listening to all their favorite stuff, and then they're like, let's record.
And the dryness of all of it is so real because they're not adding lots of reverb and effects. There's almost none. Like, I don't hear any. There's probably a little bit. But the dryness makes it very intimate. You hear, it's like they're in the room with you.
It's like a musical whisper. Like they're like right there in your ear.
And by the way, I really heard the Jimi, having teed it up with that, with like knowing the backstory for the song, Castles Made of Sand, like in that guitar line. It's not the same. But I hear the influence. I hear where you start with Castles Made of Sand and you tweak it, you go sideways from it, and you have a completely new song that comes from it.
So castles made of sand fall in the sea eventually.
So this song is a good example of what Quest calls the drunken beat. D'Angelo famously wanted him to drag the beat versus playing it straight, which gives it almost like a wobbly feel.
That's a good word for it.
We've talked about Dilla's influence on D'Angelo in the past. Let us know. What effect is this?
Listen, go back to our Far Side episode, which is one of my favorites. They're all great. We don't have any bad episodes. But on the Far Side episode, we go into more detail about Dilla. I do some demonstrations. Basically, though, in a nutshell, here's the summary. If you want to really broadly talk about how musical time works, there's usually straight time and then there's swing time. But then there's this third category called Dilla time. That's Dan Charnas's phrase. And actually, JD himself called it simple complex. It just means that multiple things are happening at once in the stack of instruments. And so that's a very oversimplified way of explaining it, but I'll just be really clear. Some of the things that might be swung, so you might swing the kick drum while the hi-hat remains straight eighths. That's what happened in the demonstration for Far Side for Runnin'. The eighth notes are da, 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 but where the kick and snare come are not on the grid. They're a little bit ahead.
Quantized.
They're a little behind. They're usually a little bit behind, but sometimes they're a little bit ahead. So this idea of Dilla time is just playing with the lines between swing and straight time, the lines between one instrument is playing this while another one is playing, like one instrument could be swung, but the bass might just be straight. But even within the instruments, and this is what Quest famously, he's talked many times about how he trained himself to sort of have the kick drum sound like a drunken 5-year-old or something like that, right? While the snare might remain on the 2 and 4. So that's kind of this idea of playing with time. And it shows up throughout this whole record, kind of on all the instruments. Sometimes it'll be in the drums. A lot of the vocals, a lot of D'Angelo's vocal delivery plays with back phrasing and being just a little behind. But maybe one of the harmonies is right on. It's amazing what it does for this record.
Unlike most of the songs on Voodoo that were played, like you said, with live instruments and with this live jam feel, Devil's Pie started off as a beat produced by the legendary hip-hop producer DJ Premier. The story goes that it was originally intended for the rapper Cannabis, who passed on it, but when D'Angelo heard it, he loved it immediately. We're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're breaking down the magic behind Devil's Pie, from the gritty samples to those wonderful D'Angelo vocals, when we get back.
Guys, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is the perfect time to score huge deals on all things home, no matter what your style.
Wayfair is the place to shop for all things home. Everything from sofas to spatulas. You name it, they have it. And you can get up to 70% off during Wayfair's Black Friday sale.
That's right, Diallo. Wayfair also has styles that you can't find anywhere else. No generic pieces you've seen 100 times. You can make sure your home is incredibly you.
Starting October 30th, you can shop Wayfair's can't miss Black Friday deals all month long. Plus, you can sit back and relax with Wayfair's fast and easy shipping just in time for the holidays.
Diallo, what are you doing for Thanksgiving?
You know, I think we're actually going to stay in town. So
Okay.
that means we have a whole bunch of family coming over.
Yeah.
And that means, honestly, given how they really put it on us to be good hosts, we're going to decorate the heck out of our house. So we're going to use Wayfair to do it because everything from like the cooking
Yeah.
utensils and everything that it takes to sort of make your place look festive,
Right.
for the harvest, if
The
you will.
spatulas and the sofas, as we were just mentioning. Everything, the gamut. It runs the gamut of what all of our holiday needs are. Wayfair is the go-to destination for everything home, no matter your style or budget.
Earn rewards and get the best savings in the neighborhood with Wayfair's new loyalty programs. 5% back on every item across Wayfair's family of brands. Free shipping, members-only sales, and more. Terms apply.
Wayfair makes it easy with fast and free shipping, even on the big stuff. They'll even help you set it up.
Don't miss out on early Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com now to shop Wayfair's Black Friday deals for up to 70% off.
That's WAYFAIR.com. Sale ends December 7th.
All right, welcome back to One Song. All right, Luxury, let's get into the music. Should we start with the main drum sample?
Let's start with it. And just a reminder, this song is such an outlier on this record. It's just two guys. There's no Questlove on this. There's no Dilla, like literally or figuratively. It's just D'Angelo and DJ Premier. It started with DJ Premier creating this beat, which I will now play for you. And that's it. A 2-bar loop, a kick, a snare, and a hi-hat. Programmed, by the way, I should say. So DJ Premier, originally from Houston, Texas. His name is Chris Martin, but he started as Waxmaster C before becoming DJ Premier, or Primo, as he's famously known. With Guru, he was in the duo Gangstar.
Yes.
And then, of course,
Epic group.
very famously and epically as well as a DJ/producer, did cuts including and not limited to Nas's New York State of Mind.
Oh, yeah.
He did Kick in the Door for Biggie.
This goes out to you. This goes out to you and you.
It's almost too much to name. You've got Come Clean by J. Rue the Damager.
Yeah.
You've got, his production career is intense. It's insane.
Right, but what's crazy
Group
about
Home, Superstar, all that stuff.
As I watch my friends die, but all I could do is sit back and cry. These are feelings I'm expressing through my rhymes. I've been through hard times, so many.
you could keep on naming names. You could keep
Yeah,
on
you can go
going
on
and
forever.
going. What's crazy, though, is I found a quote where he talks about how at heart he still thinks of himself as like mainly a DJ. He's DJ Premier. And quote, the producing pays the bills.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Did he really?
Yeah. Like,
That's insane.
I know. He's got...
That's like Leonardo DiCaprio being like, I got this pace up, but it's really my helicopter designs. Like, what in the world? That's I never knew that.
He's a very talented man on the decks, but also on the MPC. He does them both. But DJing, his identity, it sounds like DJ Premier. It says it right there in
DJ
the title,
Premier.
is as a DJ.
Well, yeah, so he produced this track. It's an amazing track.
So I'm going to recreate, by the way, the samples coming up. But first, let me just quickly walk you through his process. So what we know about DJ Premier's production process at this point in 1998 when this track was made was that he had two Akais. He had a Rockmount S950, which was his main sampler. That's what he would use to sample records and to get the sounds into the device. But then he would actually use his MPC 60 with the 16 pads, the classic, as a performance device. That was his instrument.
The one that gets shout out on all the 90s hip hop songs.
The MPC is the hip-hop tool of choice.
Yeah, and specifically the 60, I want to say.
The 60, right? At
Yeah.
this point, the 60 is the one. So he uses it not as a sampler, but just to trigger the sounds. Cool quote from DJ Premier. He said, I tend to program my drums, but a lot of the time I'll turn off the 16th notes, meaning the quantization, which would get it perfect, and I'll play the MPC live, so it sounds like live drumming. I like it to sound loose. That's why my drums have a little bounce to them. I'm not sure on this track. That's a 2-bar loop, what I just played for you. Across the entire song, I listened the entire way. There's a little bit of variation. So he might have played this one on the pads. He might not have, but I'll play them for you. I'll recreate what he might have done with his MPC 60.
Oh, wow, cool.
This is an Akai device made for the digital age. So this is a way to trigger sounds that are coming from Ableton, but it's not that dissimilar from the idea behind an MPC, which is that there's 8 pads here. I'm holding my device. It's got 8 of what he would have had 16 pads, each of which you put a sound in. So in this case, he's chopped up 3 sounds. There's a kick, there's a snare, and there's a hi-hat. So from that quote again, he may have programmed the pattern across the song, or he may have performed it like this. All right. I think we can call that successful. 92% accurate.
I love that boom bap.
It's
that
the boom
goes in
bap.
there. It's that boom
It's the
bap.
boom bap.
DJ Premier, just really known for it. It sounded so good when you were in your headphones, walking down the street, feeling yourself.
Yeah. And it's got a little bit of swing. It's got that like walking down the street swing to it. It's not straight. It's got...
No.
It's that second
Yeah.
kick drum, that 16th note, boom, 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 that gives it a little bit of a swing.
Yeah. I love it. I always said it felt a little bit like a beat down, but you also might just be walking down the street.
Like a beat down.
I grew up in a violent neighborhood. Let's talk about the bass. What's going on with the bass in this song?
So
And by the way, can I just say, I think the bass is one of the other obviously defining features of the song. It sounds so good.
Not only is it the defining feature of the song, this song has like kind of 4 things in it.
Yeah.
It's that drum beat we just listened to, the bass we're about to hear, D'Angelo's voice, and then sprinkled throughout, there's a handful of samples
Samples
and
scratches.
scratching.
Yeah.
But it's a really sparse song that's really centered on.
And very dark. I mean, you got to remember, coming out of Brown Sugar, which was like beautiful and lush, like Cruising and Lady and Me and Those Dreamy Eyes of Mine. Like, those are so beautiful. And then this song comes, and it sounds more ominous and dark.
Yeah.
That part
Sparse.
of it. It's
the sparseness, I think, contributes to the darkness, I think.
Totally.
I think, it's
A little bit like when we were talking about RZA's production for Wu-Tang.
Yeah.
Like, that sparseness kind of creates a darker vibe.
Yeah, there's all of the harmonic content, all of the polyphony in the song is in the vocal.
Yeah.
There's only a single bass note that you're ever hearing at any given time. There's no guitars, there's no keyboards, there's no chords being played across the entire song, except in the vocal stacks. And boy, those are some big chords when we hear them in a moment.
Absolutely.
But first, let's start with the bass.
Woo! Come on.
That was cycling through my head all night long, by the way. That
It's
bass line,
so good.
so good.
Why did I
It's
just
so-
say come on like I'm
Come
70?
on.
Come on, young man. They didn't say let's go. They said come on.
Come on.
It was
Come
more
on,
inviting.
everybody. Come on. I thought you were doing an ODB thing. Come on,
Come
everybody.
on, baby, come on. Different song.
So let's talk about the bass. This is not, contrary to what you might think from listening to the rest of the record and maybe knowing about it, it's not Pino Palladino, but it sounds very Pino Palladino, doesn't it?
That's crazy to me because I guess not knowing, the intricacies of music production at the time this came out, I would have assumed that the same basis was on the entire album.
It really fits into the record. It's really interesting how that happens. Like there's something about the tone and the choice of notes and even the melodicism. I'll talk in a minute about the strangeness of what's happening in the notes that are being played. But first I'll recreate it because this is a sample that comes from a Teddy Pendergrass song from 1977 called And If I Had.
That's what makes Premiere a freaking genius, dude.
Right? Just this little fill at the beginning.
That little intro
Mm-hmm.
doesn't even have a rhythm to it. It's just a slide into a song, and he reworked it in our brains so much. I love stuff like that.
I can't pretend to be anywhere near the genius of a Premiere or a Dilla, but I do have the ear of someone who's been chopping breaks for 2 decades now.
Yeah.
You go about the world and you hear an isolated section of something.
Yeah.
It starts with drums. I remember being at a cafe when I first started producing and I heard Train in Vain by The Clash. I'm like, I'm going to go grab that kick and snare. And then your whole life unfolds in front of you. You're constantly like, I'm going to go grab that isolated thing. Premier's brain does many things that I don't understand.
Yeah.
But he heard this and he's like, I can take those bass notes and build a new bass line out of it.
I guess for me, it's just almost like a tempo thing, right? Like it's almost like there are times where you'll hear like a weird little part of a song.
Yeah.
And because it's already into the song and there's
Right.
always like 4/4 time or whatever, like you'll be
Totally.
like, oh, that small little snippet. But this is not even that. This is like something that technically is not on a time signature yet. It's the slide into
I
the
hear
song.
what you're hearing too.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you're hearing in that moment, it's free floating. It's the top of the song. It's about to introduce you
Yeah.
to what ended up being a very slow ballad.
Yes.
So it's sort of that more shocking to realize that it was put into
Yes.
this 92 BPM
You
tune.
named it.
Right.
Yes.
So cool, right? Well, let me show you what he did to that. So we always do this. There's a sample phantom on this song. There's a gentleman who's a bass player whose name we know. So that player is Jimmy Williams, who is part of the Philly International contingent. By the way, another Philly connection, right?
That's
With Questlove and
fantastic.
the Roots.
Gamble and Huff, come on.
Gamble and Huff, McFadden and Whitehead. One of my favorite bass lines of all time
Yeah.
is this gentleman. Here it is. McFadden and Whitehead, Ain't No Stopping Us Now, 1979. Jimmy Williams, Give It Up. Here we go. When I sit down
Yeah.
in front of Ableton with my bass strapped on and I got a beat ready, and I'm like, I'm going to create a new song, I often start with that. I often go sideways. How can I do something like that but different? It's melodic, it's grooving, it's funky.
Jimmy Williams,
It's Jimmy Williams.
Bernard Edwards.
Bernard Edwards.
There's some people
These are my guys.
who their bass lines are just really, really complicated. And they didn't have to be that complicated, but because they are and they're so great, you just love it. It just brings a smile to
It's
your
a hook.
face.
It fulfills the purpose that your brain needs from a song, which is usually in the vocal. But no. This is giving you a melody, but it's groovy and it's low and sexy. Ah,
The same
So good.
basis on Ain't No Stopping Us Now is on Devil's Pie
That's
by
right.
D'Angelo.
so let me just remind you of what the original sounds like. Right? So it's blink and you miss it. 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's-
4 notes.
It's on a waltz swing.
Dun, 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 dun. You're right. Dun, 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 dun. It's like 12/8 time, like a little triplet feel.
So crazy.
So he took those 4 notes, he pitched the entire thing down 1, or he pitched all the individual notes down 1, mapped them to his MPC, and performed. By the way, part of his process is, as he's talked about, is there's a lot of trial and error. So he played around with different ideas until he got to this one, which is each of those sounds chopped up and pitched down, and one of them pitched down again. So I'll just explain that to you. So here it is. That's the beginning of the pattern. And that's the 4th note. But then he pitches that 4th note down 3 more steps to get a 5th note out of it.
Yeah.
So he's playing this. And that's the bass line to Devil's Pie.
That is so good.
It's so genius,
That
right?
is so fucking
It's
good.
so genius. And there's little subtle things that he left in that are different. The first 3 notes are dun, dun, dun in the transposition down 1 step, 1/2 step. That's B, C sharp, B. But the B's are different. Is short, and the second one is longer. And he used them in the mix differently. They fulfill different functions. If you were to do, it doesn't work as well. So he did dun, dun, longer one. It's just these little subtle genius
It's those little
touches.
things that, by the way, it's because of the song he sampled. It sounds like you have a live basis on.
Oh, you hear the fingers, you hear
Yeah.
the strings, you hear the slide of the
You
strings,
hear the
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it's
especially on this note,
yeah.
sliding down.
Like you could play those notes on a keyboard, but it wouldn't sound the same because
No.
you wouldn't feel the thread.
The second bar just has these 2 sliding notes, one of which is pitched down an extra 3. So it sounds like this. Which gives it this sort of like drunken feel,
Yeah.
right? Which is happening across a lot of the other Dilla-inspired parts of this record.
I love it. While we're talking about these samples, there's this other part in the song. It's like this descending, almost sounds like something out of the movie Alien. It sounds like something out of the Alien
Yes.
franchise. But play us a little bit of that just so the audience knows what I'm talking about.
Okay, here it is in the mix. This is also chopped up from a sample, which I'll show you in a second. But first, here is what it sounds like in the mix, isolated.
Yeah, that's it. Sounds like a 1960s flying saucer landing.
Bingo.
Oh no, did I guess
You
it?
nailed it, my friend. It is an actual flying saucer that they recorded in 1967.
Oh, okay.
No, but you're not
Fool me
wrong.
once.
It's called Jericho Jerk. It's a song from 1967 by Pierre Henry or Henri maybe, and Michel Colombier, and it sounds like this in its original form.
Wow.
So groovy.
I'm feeling this. I have been waiting for this song to do something so I could place it neatly in a genre, and it refuses to cooperate.
It really is not cooperative at all.
This song is 5 minutes of intro.
It's a long ass intro.
I don't know. What is this?
Where's it going?
Jazz?
We're halfway through the song. We're halfway through.
I thought I was going to go to a loungy place. It never went there.
It never went there, and we're halfway done. I'll fast forward. Let's just see where it ends up. Nope. That's a minute 40. That's what we're waiting for. Now it's over.
It gave you genre in the last bar.
Because
in the last 2 seconds of that song, it went to genre.
It's all freaking awesome late 60s like sound effects and
so
modes.
good.
And
next time I throw a party with a shag
synths.
carpet and a twister set, I am putting that song on for 11 minutes.
That's the one.
That was fantastic. That's a really cool, weird song.
It's a cool, weird song, and the same dudes who did that did the song that Futurama based their theme song on.
That is super cool. Wow. Premier had that in his back pocket. He knew to
He was
sample
waiting
that.
for the moment, and this was the moment.
I mean, from that weird, quirky sound,
Yeah.
which does play a huge part in why we love this song.
It's one of the only things you're hearing that isn't his voice and the rhythm section.
Oh, sure.
It's almost all there is in the middle.
But then there's like what he did with the bass. He took this thing that didn't have necessarily a rhythm or a tempo, and he gave it to it and birthed this new song. And another thing that I think Premier does that I absolutely love is that he'll take the smallest like word snippet. You know what I mean? Like he's done this so many times, and he'll cut them into like whole sentences to be the chorus of a whole nother song. He did this famously on one of his own songs. This is a snippet from Gang Starr's You Know My Steez. Check out this chorus.
You know my stage.
Method.
Let them know. Do your thing, y'all. Keep it live. To the beat, y'all. The beat is set.
Like, just the king of that. Like,
Yeah,
you got Method Man, Flavor
Yeah.
Flav. You've got a couple of different hip-hop icons all sampled to form a whole new sentence for the chorus of that song. And he does a little bit of this on this song, on Devil's Pie.
We're on the plate. Check it out. Walk to the beat. This I repeat in this everlasting game.
Listen, obviously that last one is Fat Joe, a song called Success, but he's got vocal sampling in there from Raekwon, I, which if you don't know the song Fakin' Jax, you probably heard in some of your favorite post 1997 hip hop songs. Go check out Fakin' Jax by I, by a group produced by Pete Rock, among others. You got Dick Gregory in there, a speech called Black Progress. You've got Raekwon and Ghostface from Wu Gambinos, the Beatnuts off the books this year. So many wonderful moments of him just grabbing snippets and little pieces of Black 90s excellence. I love it. I love what Premier does when he scratches a vocal in. And while we're talking about vocals, this wouldn't even be a D'Angelo episode unless we talked about the amazing singer at the heart of all this wonderfulness. Such a great song, such poignant lyrics. We'd love to hear something. Why don't you start us off, my man?
Fuck the slice, want the pie. Why is why till we fry. Watch us all stand in line for a slice of the devil's pie.
Insane. So beautiful.
Beautiful.
The stack is all D'Angelo.
Mm-hmm.
It's him 4, maybe 5 voices at times. It's hard actually for me to extract what those harmonies are because those are church and gospel and jazz, frankly, chords. The overlap of all
You
of that
can really
is there.
hear the gospel influence.
Very
when
close
you guys say it.
harmonies,
Yeah.
very interesting choices. They don't stack perfectly, and that's part of
So
the
it's like
beauty.
3 or 4
I
at
mean,
a time.
At least there might be 4 or 5. At the very least, I can get 1 or 2 of the voices out of there. Let's see what that sounds like. Here's the backgrounds.
Fuck the slice, want the pie. Why is why till we fry.
And then here's the lead, and I'll mix them together.
Fuck the slice, want the pie. Why is why till we fry. Watch us all stand in line for a slice of the devil's pie.
What's crazy about these lyrics to me is that I think I understood them one way when they came out, and I understand them totally differently now. When I came out, it felt like, hey, this is messed up. We're all standing in line trying to get a piece of the devil's pie. Wine and women. And by the way, I like the women is always a sin because it's always been singing. But, like crazy, forbidden, sexual fantasy, all that stuff is in this song. It actually reminds me of the Depeche Mode song "Walking in My Shoes," where he says, "Forbidden fruit for me to eat."
You mean it's vulnerable? It's not just decrying all of the sins. It's also
but that's the thing.
Admitting defeat to a degree.
I think at the time I heard it, I thought it was more like these are all terrible things, and like I heard the moralizing. Now when I hear it, I sort of hear like, and I hope I'm not putting something on D'Angelo that is not there, but it's almost like he's saying, these are the temptations that I personally am being faced with.
I hear that too.
And I don't want it, but yet we're programmed to want it. Whether we're programmed at birth genetically to want more, things in excess, or maybe society has pushed us towards that. But it definitely feels a lot more personal.
It's about temptation. It's about we can't control these things that are out there and tempting us, and it's life.
And maybe it's something in the middle. Maybe he's both judging these things, but also saying, yes, I too understand why people fall for the devil's pie.
I hear that too. And that was like on repeated listens as well. I think the first time I heard it, it felt like a moralizing thing as well.
Yeah.
And not a bad message, not one that I can't stand behind. Like, you're right. Like, be careful of things that are bad for you.
I mean, he's coming from a gospel background, so he probably has pretty strong opinions about.
In the devil's pie, it's right there in the title,
It's
right?
right there in the title. Yeah. But I also think that, as you get older, you start to, I don't know, a part of me is just like, have we gone too far on the sin thing? Like, can we let people just be people a little bit and show them some grace? I don't know. It's a hard thing to nail.
It's a hard thing to nail. I think that's part of the human condition is you navigate day to day and you try to make good decisions and you try to also not restrict yourself from doing things that are fun, that don't hurt people, but like a drink every now and then. If you're not an alcoholic, you know what I mean? Like,
a part of me doesn't want my kids to ever have a drink, but then another part of me doesn't.
You know that moralizing isn't going to work if you put the hammer down and like never do it. It tends to backfire, right? Backfiring hammers. I'm mixing my metaphors, but you get my point.
But I totally get your point. I think you change as you get older.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that I would hear that song one way in '98 and hear it very differently now. But that's just the chorus. Let's dive into the verse.
Who am I? Justify all the evil in our eyes. When I myself feel the high of all that I despise.
One thing I wanted to point out, by the way, is that the rhythm of this song is consistent. It's the same in the bass as it is in the vocal. He's singing the same da 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 da. I'll play them together and you can hear how they lock in, except that he's also adding this behind the beat variations from moment to moment.
Yeah, and I even hear like a churchy hand clap.
There's snaps and hand claps. But let me just play what I'm just describing so you can hear how the bass and the vocal lock together. Or at least they relate.
Who am I? Justify all the evil in our eyes. I myself.
So in the first bar of that 2-bar loop, they're locked in, and then they sort of go call and response. So there's an interplay between the two. It's a 16th note. Da, 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 da. 1 E and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 E and a 2 and a 3. Da, da. And again, it's swung, it's behind the beat, it's inconsistent. But that's kind of the world we're living in rhythmically, which helps, I think, reinforce the simplicity of that motif. Dun, 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 is the whole song.
Yeah.
We're really hearing that across the 5 minutes, which is why by the end of it, it's just embedded in your brain. You've heard it in the vocals, you've heard it in the bass. Bum, bum, bum.
And can we just say something about those lyrics? Because I almost got chills just hearing it in his own voice because it's more like a speech and less like a song. So some of that stuff lands harder sometimes. He says, who am I to justify all the evil in our eyes when I myself feel the high from all that I despise? Like, so in other words, it's
hard.
Just like what we were just talking about. Like, we know the pleasant buzz you can get off of a great glass of wine, but we don't necessarily want our children drinking wine, right? So it's just like, and he's on a whole different level. He's an international superstar. Lord knows what he's been offered, and he's saying, like, who am I to judge when I've felt that high?
This is the cognitive dissonance, especially of a deep thinker who's sort of self-aware and can put into his art this moment of decision paralysis. Like, I don't want to do it, but I kind of do. I know I shouldn't, but I still kind of want to. I know what it's like, and I know I shouldn't, but I want to anyway.
Yes. And one other thing I just got to point out, like, to me, I love hearing his voice when he's talking like this because it's still, just even the way he's delivering the thing is sort of rhythmic.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, at 92 BPMs, it's just this weird DJ thing. Like, Prince, Let's Go Crazy is the same way. I always hear in the back of my mind, like, a church clap. So it's like, da 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 da. Like it's just that back clap, that clap on the
double
back
time.
beat.
You hear the double time.
The double time, yes. I heard it just now when I've never thought about that in relationship to this song. Now, Blake, take us to the bridge.
All right, you want to talk gospel? I got some gospel for you, my friend.
Listen to that all day.
A gospel choir of just D'Angelo.
Yeah.
I don't know, 6 or 7 notes in there, at least, maybe even more. Couldn't isolate them all, but here's 1 or 2. And here's one of the leads taken out. Apparently, when he did his vocals, he was alone. Questlove talks about how he just wanted to be secluded. So most of Voodoo was him just taking hours. Once the track was done, it would take hours for him to come up with, stack, and be happy with all the takes and all the parts for each of those individual notes that he would be singing. He was a choir of one on this tune, on the whole record.
Just like Jimmy. Jimmy liked to be isolated. He thought he did not have a great voice.
At the same place 30 years earlier. He was doing the same thing in the same exact studio.
Yeah, it had been almost 30 years
right.
earlier. Wow, that's crazy. Play us a little bit of the vocal outro.
Out there, get down with the slice up the devil's spine.
I don't think he said anything there.
Woman in the street.
So good. And
can't help but shake my head the whole time.
I know, we were all just vibing
with my hair right there.
There was one line in there where it almost sounded like it was Mos Def, and it occurs to me that Mos was almost like a flip side of this coin because D'Angelo was like this R&B singer who was coming with like hip hop influences and vibes. Meanwhile, Mos Def was most definitely a rapper.
Yeah.
But he was one of the first rappers I remember who were like, man, that dude, he's singing all these hooks. He sang for the Bush Babies.
Everybody groove to the music and do what you like to. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
He was singing on his own songs, like Mos Def, also recording at roughly the same time. I didn't draw these lines back then, but now I'm like seeing like the connections that are going on. There was just something in the late 90s where people were trying to do something different. And again, I think it's in large part due to the response of the ubiquity of Bad Boy Records and all the music they were putting out at the time. I always understood where Mos Def was a response to that. I understand more than ever that D'Angelo's a response to that too.
Interesting. Yeah, I see that there.
Also, you can really hear in his vocals in that outro, you can really hear the influence of the blues. And I love this one D'Angelo quote. D'Angelo said, quote, I would say the spirit of the vocals is more like a chain gang or like a feel of the slaves and the field picking, whatever the fuck Master had us picking. That's what we'd be singing when we were picking in the hot fucking sun. There's like that scene in Sinners where they show the chain gang. And when you know that that's sort of what's in his head when he's singing this, it kind of makes a lot of sense.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because, like, first of all, it wouldn't be one song in these past few months without us bringing up the blues and blue notes and tritones. Guess what? There's a tritone in the song, which I found in this strange way because the vocal, this is in G major, this song, but the bass line is not in G major. It's in G Lydian. It's a mode. It just means that one note is different.
Okay.
So the bass is in a different key, technically, a different mode than the vocals. It's very strange. I'll just explain what that means briefly. The notes that he's playing, that he's singing. Now, of course, he's harmonizing this, so that's an oversimplification, but it's G major. But the bass line is... Didn't that note sound strange when I just played it for you?
Yeah.
It's a C sharp. It's not in the G major. It's a very strange juxtaposition because there's a C and a C sharp. Those two notes exist at the same time sometimes. And that's a tritone. In other words, in the G, in G major, that's the tritone note. So there's a tritone in this song. It's the blues you were just referring to.
I'm not.
Shows up there.
Can I just say, I love that you found that. And I'm not surprised because the very first time I heard this, every time I've heard this song, there's always something a little bit, I want to use the phrase in a good way, off about it.
Off is the word.
Sonically off.
And
and to know that it's intentional just makes me, realize the genius of D'Angelo.
Yeah, listen back to that bass line on its own. It's dun, dun, dun. That one half step higher is like, that's a little bit of the strangeness. Yeah. There's a little wobbliness.
There's some strangeness
in the rhythm that we've been discussing with the Dilettante, but there's also some strangeness in that one choice of one half step that is contrary in a way, but doesn't cause problems in the contrariness.
In fact, I would argue it's called devil's pie.
To the key of the vocal.
You're supposed to feel a little unnerved. You know what I mean? And that tritone is helping us feel unnerved.
Exactly.
So now that we have heard the song, how do the splits on Devil's Pie break down?
The splits are 75% Michael D'Angelo Archer, 25% Chris E. Martin, a.k.a. DJ Premier.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. We know that this song came out in 1998, 2 years ahead of Voodoo's release, and it kind of went under the radar to people outside of the hip-hop community. My theory is that it was just too different from what D'Angelo had been doing earlier on Brown Sugar. And I will say it was way darker than hip-hop and R&B at the time. As we've said so many times, this is like the height of like Bad Boy and Puffy on Top of the Whole World. Although, I will point out, this song did get a feature in the Hype Williams cult classic movie, Belly. And Hype Williams is like the guy who, in part, invented some of that shiny suit aesthetic that is in. But like he's savvy enough to know, hey, I'm going to work with D'Angelo too and throw this into my movie Belly. Let's play a clip from the movie Belly. Check this out.
Drugs and thugs, women, wine, 3 or 4 at a time. Watch them all, stand in line, folks like the devil.
Belly, really underrated movie. Has quite the interesting ending, but that's a subject for another podcast.
Don't be a spoiler, man.
Yeah, no spoilers. Watch Belly, and then find me in the DMs, and we'll talk about it. So like we said, Devil's Pie was recorded quite well in advance of Voodoo coming out. When Voodoo came out, they believed that the single was going to be Left and Right, which featured Method Man and Redman, but they were late in delivering it to MTV, and MTV said, we ain't showing this video. And it looked like that was going to be the end of, sort of D'Angelo being this guy who always gets his videos played. Lo and behold, they filmed the video for Untitled, How Does It Feel? They start showing it at like key parties in and around New York. It's the talk of the town before things were able to go viral. And pretty soon, MTV is basically forced to start showing this, BT, all these channels start showing it. And it becomes sort of a hit video at the end of sort of like the music video era. It was like a hit music video. And it turned D'Angelo into quite the sex symbol, a sex symbol that was a reluctant sex symbol, something he never wanted to be. He
struggled with that a lot,
Yeah. For those in your car, you will hear Untitled. And for those at your laptops, here's a little treat for you, a visual treat. Here is Untitled.
I just want you, man. How does it feel?
I will say ever since I saw that video, I've been very self-conscious about the V at the bottom of my
I think
waist.
A lot of people learned that existed for some humans because I didn't even know.
And Brad Pitt in Fight Club.
You could be so cut that you could have a V. I did not know you could have. Before there was six-pack abs, there was that as an expression that was in the common parlance.
After this video gave all of us body issues, D'Angelo said that he couldn't perform anymore without women basically being like, take your shirt off at every performance. For artists as thoughtful as intentional as D'Angelo, this was quite demoralizing. And after the success of the Untitled video, he kind of became a bit of a recluse, and there was some substance abuse. But thankfully, that was not the end of the D'Angelo story. In 2014, he blessed us with another incredible album, Black Messiah. So many good songs on Black Messiah. Here's one of my favorites. Let's listen to a bit of Charade. I mean, he's gone back to what I think served him so well on Voodoo. He's incorporating like sort of like the jam aesthetic into his gospel and his, love of Prince.
Guitar and sitar sound in the mix. And he's playing guitar. I think he spent more time after Voodoo kind of learning guitar and getting that deeper into that instrument. So Diallo, what do you think the legacy of D'Angelo and Devil's Pie is.
I think the legacy of D'Angelo is going to be celebrated for a long time. Not only is he one of the great singers with that gospel-y, bluesy, voice of his, but he's also just this guy who can play so many different instruments. And, to see his growth from Brown Sugar to Voodoo, well, he didn't get there overnight, clearly. There are years in between. But right there in the middle of it is Devil's Pie. And I think that in some ways encapsulates his love of R&B and hip hop into something that doesn't feel retro. It feels new. It felt new. I think that's why we as people who talk about music embrace the term neo soul, because it's got the neo in there. Moving away from something that feels fake, like pleather, into something that feels authentic and real. And I think that it came along at a great time. And I think that artists for generations to come will be inspired by him.
I totally agree. I feel like D'Angelo has really risen. Part of, obviously, his not being in the public eye for so many years, I think hasn't tarnished his reputation. Maybe it's enhanced it. But unfortunately, it has meant he's on the tier with Prince. He's on the tier with all the other Yodas, right? Yeah. He really is up there with the George Clintons and the Slys. And maybe, unfortunately, like Sly, he did have this moment of sort of retreating from the public spotlight for reasons. But he has this incredible body of work, of music. And again, I really do think he is a bit in this Mount Rushmore of iconic musicians. And the fact that we lost him so soon is such a tragedy. Only 3 full albums. He could have been Herbie Hancock. There's no reason to believe he might not have had another 30, 40 years of music making and evolution, perhaps at the same pace of an album every couple of decades.
Sure.
But incredible music nevertheless.
I love that you say he's now one of the Yodas.
He's one of the
had
Yodas,
his Yodas, and now he is one of the Yodas. He's ascended to that place, and now he's got like the Force Ghost shine around him. No, I'm serious. I mean, like, to me, if you love Star Wars and Star Trek as much as me, like, you're getting those chills right now because you're just like, he is Obi-Wan. He did it, and we love him for it. All right, One Song Nation, it's time for one genre. Our friends at Discogs challenged us to do a deep dive into a subgenre and share a few records that we think are essential listening.
And just a reminder, when we talk about genre on this show, we talk about it very broadly. We recognize that there are porous borders and overlap in all kinds of genres. We don't want to restrict you or restrict your language by insisting something has to only be one genre at a time.
That's right.
That's not how genre works.
It's just so we can talk about music that has shared sensibilities.
Precisely right.
All right, so today we're talking about dub reggae, a music that evolved in the 1970s in Jamaica. If you haven't already listened to it, please listen to our Sister Nancy and Dawn Penn episodes, because we do some really good conversations about this genre. Can I just say real quick that as a hip-hop DJ, I thought dub just meant instrumental, because often you would buy hip-hop 12 inches and then it would just say dub mix, and that was just the version without the rap. But it's so much deeper than that. What can you tell us about dub reggae?
Well, I definitely go back to listen to those. It takes 2 hours. So listen to those 2 1-hour-long episodes, Sister Nancy and Dawn Penn, for the full explanation. But in a nutshell, yes, it was this discovery that you could take songs and mute sections of them in the multi-tracks and then start to be creative about like throwing a fragment of a vocal into the delay. This creativity birthed an entire movement in the 70s, which we kind of take for granted now as the basis of all remixing.
Yes.
Comes out of dub and comes out of Jamaica and comes out of this creative explosion in the 70s.
What's one of the funny things about the term mashup that was like so popular in the 2000s? I was like, in the hip hop community in the 90s, we always had like an acapella that we throw over somebody else's instrumental. I mean, technically that is a mashup. We just didn't call it that.
Reusing recorded ideas from different songs has been in the ether for a half century at this point. Yeah. Goes back to
now,
Jamaica.
What is your selection for today's dub?
Oh my God, this was such a Sophie's Choice times 12.
Guys, he was sweating.
This is, my obsession is dub. I have my Discogs, collection of dub is for the last 4 years disgusting. Like, I spent a lot of money. The number one purchase on Discogs, I should say, is a dub record. So the record is called Tribesman Assault, but the band is Roots Underground. This one cost me about $100 worth every penny just for this first song, High Times. My God, every Friday night, I sit on the couch with the bass and I put this song on the turntable and I play the bass line to this 10 times in a row. That is how I ease into the weekend. One of the greatest dub tracks of all time.
Can I ask you
Yeah.
real quick, like, is that song available like on MP3? Like, could I listen to it?
Yes, it's on Spotify, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can go listen to the song on any platform.
But nothing sounds as good as like when you've got like, I think more than some genres, the dub genre just sounds better when there's a needle on a record.
I think so. It really benefits from the tactile nature and the sounds and like all of the dust in the
The bass
vinyl.
just sounds a little bit more lower.
Absolutely. Listen, I'm going to really quickly go through these. That's my number one. My number two is, and this is to get some variety too, Horace Andy. These are all instrumentals on the Tribesman Assault record.
I used
Horace
to dress
Andy.
like this, so I'm immediately thinking I got to get this.
This is one of the all-time greats. Dancehall Style by Horace Andy. Another Wackies. These are both on Wackies, which is Bull Wackies, which is a label that actually came out of Long Island. Guys from Jamaica that moved to Long Island to make dub reggae, and incredible productions, really dry. It's very Wu-Tang, actually.
Really?
It's very dark and gritty production sound, yeah.
What,
But this-
what
yeah.
makes Horace Andy's music stand out?
His voice is so distinctive. You've heard it on Massive Attack. He's the voice on at least 3 Massive Attack songs.
Oh, very cool.
Is a
I thought
man
I'd seen
with-
his name before.
Yeah.
But now you're saying this dub that you have has vocals.
This one has the classic thing where they take the vocal version and then on the flip of the 45,
They've
they
got
would
the
have dubbed it
dubs.
out. But now they make this on the record version, you get both literally spliced together. Sometimes it'll be one song, but you'll kind of hear where the vocal ends and there's this tiny space before they've spliced in very charmingly and perfectly the
Yeah.
dub version. So they're all 7-minute long songs. And I'll do one more because I know we've got to move on. I could do a whole podcast about dub records. I got to mention my guy, Lee Scratch Perry. I have 50 Lee Scratch Perry records. It was so hard to choose the number one, but this is it. Black Art and dub. If you've got to start somewhere, I literally, when I'm awake at 3 a.m. and I can't fall asleep, I put this on and it soothes my brain.
And by the way, Basquiat artwork, if I'm not mistaken.
This is actually the wall of his studio, if you can believe it. And you're not wrong to connect that they visually look similar. But on the wall of the Black Ark in Jamaica before he burned it down, he just had all of these strange
People come through.
runes and
Oh, wow.
words and letters and symbols. But the Black Ark in question in the title of this record comes from Lee Scratch Perry's studio that he made some of the greatest music ever made, including the Congos record that's very famous. And then he burned it down.
Oh, wow.
What about you, Diallo? What is your dub pick this
Oh,
week?
mine easily. Studio One dub, the original,
Ooh, good
right
choice.
around the world. Today's sound today. I think you own this one too.
Oh my God, that's another expensive Discogs purchase I've
No,
made. yeah.
listen. First off, can I just say Soul Jazz Records, sort of across many genres.
Totally, yes.
Excellent.
Incredible
excellent
curation, yeah.
So we could talk about Brazilian funk. We could talk about like weird, like New York stuff
Yep.
on future episodes. But this one, it's basically dub versions of songs that had been put out in Jamaica in the
Yeah.
1960s.
Studio One tunes.
Studio One tunes.
Studio One label.
And I would just say, like, this one, I think you can find in MP3 form. If you can't, just go out and just listen to it. It was a good introduction for me to the genre, just because I didn't know as much as you. I didn't come up with it the way that you did. But man, really good song select. Drunken Sailor version, outstanding. Check that one out in particular. Man, I'm so glad you recommended this one to me.
Well,
Thank you.
my pleasure.
So those are our one genre picks. Check out our list on Discogs.com.
And we know there are so many more dub reggae gems out there, so please let us know some of your favorites in the comments.
As always, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok. You can find me on Instagram at Diallo, Diallo. It's just 6 letters, at Diallo, or on TikTok at Diallo Riddle. That's 12 letters. I know that's a lot, but it's all I could get.
And you can find me on Instagram at LUXXURY and on TikTok at LuxuryXX. And if you have a radio, check out my new radio show every Friday night at 10 p.m. on KCRW.
And you can follow our podcast on Instagram and TikTok at One Song Podcast for exclusive content. You can also watch full episodes of One Song on YouTube and Spotify. Just search for One Song Podcast. We would love it if you like and subscribe.
Also, be sure to check out the One Song Spotify playlist for all the songs we discuss on our episodes. You can find the link in our episode description.
And if you made it this far, you're officially part of the One Song Nation.
Yay!
Salute.
Good job.
Show us some love, give us 5 stars, leave a review, and send this episode to a fellow music nerd. It really helps keep the show going.
Proud nerd. We're all proud nerds out
Oh,
here.
there's
at
no
One
shame
Song
in
Land.
nerddom. Luxury helped me in this thing.
I'm producer, DJ, songwriter, and musicologist Luxury.
And I'm actor, writer, director, and sometimes DJ Diallo Riddle.
And this is one song. We will see you next time.
This episode was produced by Melissa Duenas. Our video editor is Casey Simonson. Our associate producer is Jeremy Bimbo. Mixing by Michael Harmon and engineering by Eric Hicks. Production supervision by Razak Boykin. Additional production support from Z Taylor. This show is executive produced by Kevin Hart, Mike Stein, Brian Smiley, Eric Eddings, Eric Weil, and Leslie Guam.